Hi, stick with me while I make this book sleeve for books. It's padded, it's quilted, but you don't have to quilt it. You could just use fusible fleece, or you could use pre-quilted, or you don't have to, don't have to use it quilt at all. And it fits both a big book in it or a small book in it. So stick through right to the end, and I'll show you how they go in it. It's a really, really easy thing to sew. I'll tell you exactly how to do it. So like it's a free sewing pattern because I tell you exactly how you can do it. You don't need anything fancy. And let's make some. Let's make some for gifts. And also tell me in the comments, have you read this series? What did you think? I picked this one up at a street library when I was walking the dog. Came home, started reading it, and then the next day I went into the bookstore and bought this one so I could follow it up. I liked the dragons. But I've just come off reading the ACOTAR series, and that set the bar so high. So if I hadn't have just finished that, I think this would have been at the most amazing book I've read this year. But unfortunately, doesn't really match up to ACOTAR for me. The crown, was it a court of thorn and roses? So let me know. Are you a wing person? A dragons? I do like the cover though. Look at that. It's this one has got that feel about it, and it's got the cute dragon. I was actually thinking of doing a dragon motif and to sew on here. So imagine if you were giving someone this book or the first one for their birthday, you could do a dragon motif and put it on there. Oh, that would be so awesome. You could take a screenshot of this, enlarge it, and then just cut it out in felt, and then just hand stitch it on there. Oh my God, that's just an awesome idea. I might do that for the next one. All right, so stick with me and we'll go through this and you'll be having your own book sleeve in no time. Okay, so today we're going to be making a book sleeve, but first I'm just going to quickly cut the selvage off. All right, put that aside. Right, you're going to need fabric. Now, this fabric I just got from the thrift store, so this is not actually going to cost me like $1 the entire thing. So external fabric, inside fabric. So inside fabric, outside fabric, whichever way you want to go. I'm using scissors. You can use a rotary mat and cutter if you want. A ruler if you like nice, neat, straight edges. Some sort of batting. I'm just using some scraps that I have. I don't know what they're from, but they're too big. I'll just cut them down to size. This is either Annie's Soft and Stable or Bosal Foam. I don't know which one yet. I just found it in the stash. And you need some books. Now, the big question is, what size do we make it? So I'm going to show you this little cheating way to do it, because even though these books are different sizes, they're the same size, if you can kind of get that drift. So the best way to show you, and this is how I'm going to measure it. I'm going to go from spine edge, measure it from here, up, down to here. So let's just show you. I'm going to I will use a pin to pin it and everything so that you can see. I'm going to go from here to here. Right? That is this edge to this edge. So if I take this away, and I'll show you on the bigger book, it might be bigger, but it's the same size. See? It's weird. I don't know how that works. I mean, I probably could figure it out, but anyway. So I'm going to cut 2 of these, so the same size, because it's going to also include the seam allowance. And because I'm not using a mat, I'm just going to fold these in half and cut them with my scissors. Now, if you don't have a book, you're making this as a gift to someone, let me just measure that for you. Oops, I just whacked the camera. So it's approximately, 9? Why don't we go 10 inches? We'll do it 10 inches, so that way it can be a little loosey-goosey. And we can always make it smaller. So we're just going to cut in a straight line up. Of course, you can use a rotary cutter. And if you're box sewing these, you probably will see it's not exactly straight, but it's straightish for the purpose of the event. Now, how long? Right. So we needed to go, I'll pick the longest book for this one. So we needed to come into the sleeve, and then we need to have a little bit of room at the bottom because I'm not putting boxed edges on it, box corners. So I'm going to go, how about this? Because remember, we've got seam allowances. Okay, so we've got a seam allowance. There'll be seam allowance here and there'll be seam allowance here. So it's going to make it a bit smaller. And we'll just check it with this one, but this is going to be fine because this is smaller. Now, let's just check to see how big that is. All right, so we're on 12 inches there. And if we turn it around this way, it's 12 inches, 12. How about we say 14 inches to there? Okay. That way you've got some measurements and we're sort of making the same thing. So we're just going to cut off the extra. Once again, use a rotary cutter, you'll have straighter edges. This is just for me and my son, because he was borrowing my book to take to school, and I'm like, I don't have a book sleeve, so this is a little bit out here, but that's okay. Okay, and then we're going to cut these. Now I'm going to cut this slightly smaller, but I'm not going to cut these yet because I'm going to quilt this to these. And what, sometimes they can change size. You can, depending on how you're quilting and how the warp or the weft of your fabric is. Let's not get technical. So we're just going to shut this, stick this onto, it's not going to go this way, is it? I'm not going to get two out of the one. No. Okay. So I'm just going to pop this here to the edge as much as I can, and I'm going to quilt it any way you want. You could even just baste it. You could just whatever. You don't even have to quilt them, and use whatever wadding or batting you have. And if you don't have anything, then just use some really ugly fabric in between, and just gives it a little bit of extra buffer, and you have a purpose for the ugly fabric. All right, so I'm just going to quilt this. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't exactly like straight lines, so I'm just going to possibly wing it. Should I go up and down and cross? Should I use, I don't know. Gosh, we'll go sideways because the book goes sideways, or we'll go lengthways. It'll be quicker. So we'll just quilt it, and then we'll move on to the next step. Now I have two quilted panels with uneven lines, but hey, that's how I like it. And just a note, and when you're quilting, to just increase the stitch length, especially when you're quilting foam, it goes a lot smoother. And also start at one end, come down, cut the threads, come back up, start, go down, cut the threads, come back up, start. And that way you have nice flat fabric rather than wavy fabric. Now, because I'm lazy and I am not going to get my, not lazy, I just don't want to get my quilting mat out and have to move everything for it, I am just going to sew my cutting, I'm just drawing my cutting lines. So I'm just making a straight edge, and I will then just cut on them. I'm going to use the cutout one as a template for this one, and I'm just going to put it on top and cut it out. The lining I've just folded in half, popped this on top. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to make this the lining slightly narrower, which works out fine because on one side it is narrower. Just cut the top off here, and it's not even cut straight, but I'm not straight. Okay, right. So then we're just going to make it come up. So we've got there. I'm just going to move it up a little bit so then I can cut this down because I just want the lining slightly smaller. Okay, so now we're ready to sew. So let's just, before we do anything, turn the lining around, and we're going to sew the lining We've only got to sew, you don't have to sew one seam because, when we sew the lining, we're going to sew all the way around except for this much. So might leave, whoops, you might sew from here to here and all the way up and across. And we leave this open. Okay, so to here, here, to there, leave a gap and sew to here. And then with this one, put the right sides together. We can sew down, across, and up. Easier. The top one is easier. But we'll start with this one so you can see what I'm doing. But I will just pin it just so you can see. So I'm going to sew here. And I just put my pins in this way so I can remember to stop. That's our turning point, and that is going to remind us when we're sewing to not sew there. So I'm just actually going to start here, and the best way I remember this to do it is to just this needle popped out. Don't worry about that, I can remember. Needle down, and we're going to start back stitch to here and up. I'm not going to bother cutting the thread here because it's going to be on the inside. No, it's not going to happen. It's going to happen to it. And then I'm going to turn it. And so this is where we started. We're going to leave a gap. So we're going to come to about here. A little back stitch. I'm going to come down. Needle down because we're going to turn a corner. And come up. I pinned it on the wrong side, but you can see. And then we're just going to leave that. We've done the lining. And then we come over to this. And I'm going to sew the short end together first. And because I'm using foam, I've got it on a longer stitch. I'm going to sew straight across. Okay. And then I'm going to turn it. And I'm going to come up all the way up to this end. And you can see my quilting lines, don't worry about them. And I just use the sewing machine width. I'll just show you here. I'm just going to show you that I use the sewing machine foot width as a seam guide. Just double jumps, long thread. So we'll check that I've got it all done. And we can I turn it, so then I'm sewing this way again. And I'm going to just fill the edges. Okay, nice and easy. Move those. What we're going to do is we're going to just check it. So we're going to stick our hands in and pull it out. It looks pretty cool already. Now when you didn't have to do quilting, you could just use fusible foam and iron it all together. Now I'm not going to trim the corners of this foam piece because I want that little bit of extra bulk, and that is just going to help create a little bit extra depth instead of boxing the corners. So this is what it's going to look like. Now, you don't have to put a trim finish on it. You don't. Look at this. It's going to fit in there nice and toasty. You don't have to do a trim finish, but I want to put a little, what are we going to call it? A little ribbon. It's just going to give it something to, so it doesn't fall out, okay? So you don't have to. You can just finish it off, and then you've got this nice long deep sleeve. Or you can have a tie. You can put a snap on there. You can put a button and a button, or you can do a button and an elastic loop. But I'm going to do some ribbons, so let me just reach across and grab my jar. This is my jar of ribbons, and just, oh look, the one right on top. I've got a whole bunch of sorts, but I think this is almost the same colour. I was thinking I was have to use something else. Oh, where's the end? let me guess, there's no end. I've had this for ages, so I want enough to tie it like that. Okay, so we want to sort of, do you know what, I'd rather it too long and then have to come back and trim it. So we need 2. So this is definitely too long, but we can trim it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to find the middle. Very technically, I've done this forever. So you go from the edges. I do this when I'm cutting slices and cakes. You go to the edges and you put it down flat. You grab your pin and you go from the edges and you go vroom, and at the same time, that's what gives you the middle. Because both your hands move at the same speed. Vroom. And you have a special sound effect of vroom. So I'm just going to pin it there. And I'll just pin it down here and turn it over and match it on this side. So, which is here. And like I said, it's probably way too long. We'll find out. And if you wanted to know how long this is for your own, it is just almost 9 inches. And then we sew. That was the ruler falling to the floor, which is good, isn't it? So now we're just going to sew. Open this up and I might take the thread out of the sewing machine. If you don't have that, then you would sew it this way, like that. But I'm just going to shove it in and put it this way. I'm just going to run the sewing machine backwards and forwards to secure that. Doesn't matter what it looks like because we're going to we've got to finish the seam off. And then we come around. We do this one. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to put this together so we can sew it. So I'm just going to then put this back inside out. Doesn't matter if it doesn't come all the way out. Don't worry about it. Okay. Then we're going to put the pretty side to the pretty side. Does that make sense? The exterior is the lining. Oh, sorry, I whacked the camera. And then we're going to line them up. So remembering, oops, do it again. We've only got the one seam on this. So I've turned it inside out so you can see the pretty side. Right? We're going to just stick our hand in, scooch it and shove it into the lining, to the bag. So if the pretty side of the lining is touching the pretty side of the bag. And I'm going to find that edge seam. And we're just going to match it edge to edge. Put a pin there so it doesn't go anywhere. And then if you had 2 pieces of fabric, you'd have another seam on this side, but I didn't do that because this is what happens when you use sort of scraps. So you just want to pull it tight, and you can nestle your seams, you can open them up, whatever you prefer. And then I'm just going to put a pin in there, bring it up. So you've got, before I put, you make sure your ribbon is down low, and I'm just going to put it that way to remind myself the ribbon's there. Same with here. Pull it so it's nice and even. Make sure your ribbon is down low, out of the way. Out you go. And nestle this up so it's there. Now, I'm going to do a wider seam allowance on this because the bag is very deep. So I'm going to nestle this onto my throat. If you don't have a throat piece, then I would open this up and sew from here. But I'm just going to use my throat. So I don't have a front or a back of this piece yet, but I am just going to try to bring it, I might bring it this side, poke down the lining and come down here to the seam. Start near the seam. I'm just going to open that up a little bit. Might take this one out. Open this up. I sew clothes, so I tend to open my seams. I'm going to put the needle down. I've got it on a long stitch length. I'm going to go round. Actually, I'm going to needle up again. I'm going to come down a little bit. I'm just going to line it up with one of my markers there, just so I have a deeper seam allowance. Back stitch it. Trying to keep it even. Try to make sure you've got the lining down flat. And just pull it down as you go. It's a little bit warped. I think it's because of the way that the fabric is. This is the lining, so it doesn't really matter if it's a little bit jiggly. Alright, I'm going to open up the seams because that's how... I don't know why I just did that, but I did. Sewing's about the joy of it, not about making everything even, Stevens. Now I can just tell that lining is going to gape a little bit slightly, so I'm just going to smooth it out as best I can. And I'll finish it here. I'll move my pins out of the way so I don't stab myself. And we're almost done. This is actually a really quick project. Now, because I've given it an extra big seam allowance, I'm just going to come along and trim it, because it really was a bit deep. But it just gives you a little bit extra leeway when you're sewing. It's a good project for beginners. It's a good project for someone who's been sewing for years and years and years and years and years. I was actually thinking of myself while I was quilting this, that it would be a good way to practice my free motion quilting, because then I've got something I can do. Right, so now we've got the exterior of the bag, we've got the lining. What we're going to do is through that hole right in here. It's a very small hole, but that's okay. We're going to stick our hand and we're going to grab the corner and this corner into that hole, and we're going to poke it through. Now, if you didn't make a hole very big, it's going to be a little bit jiggly like this. Today I'm using the word jiggly. I have no idea why. But this is what you call birth in a bag, which I think is the worst word. I didn't have my babies like this. I didn't have anyone, so I'm pulling it like this. Or you can just be turning the bag inside out. Okay, there was a little tear, but you know what? I don't care. It's the lining. And this is, like I said, for myself and my son when we have to share books, because he took Lord of the Rings book into school today, my Lord of the Rings, and I'm like, have you got a book bag for it? And he's like, no. You haven't got a book sleeve or anything? He's like, no. So I'm like, right, okay, today I'm making a book sleeve so we can share the Lord of the Rings, which is fine, but just doesn't get damaged in the school bag. Look at this. Right. That. How cool is this looking? So I've got those corners. They're slightly puffed up, which is cool because that's what I want. It's going to give that little bag a little bit of depth here. Now, we've got the lining. Now, you've got choices. You can have it so the lining is showing at the top, or you can turn it down like this and have it the lining isn't showing. Now, you also take it to the sewing machine and do it that way, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to fold because I can feel it. I'm going to put it into my machine here, and I'm going to put the foot straight, move the threads out of the way, put the foot straight down. And I can now manipulate this as I sew. Okay, so I'm just going to start with the back stitch, go a few, and then fold it under. If I think you can do the ironing, it just takes more time. And this is a fun project. I'm just pulling that lining down. So when you get to that, don't sew your ribbon in. And it's so easy. If you had solid fabric and your lining was a nice contrast, you could have it. You could even have it so you cut that lining a little bit longer, and then you could have a nice contrasting trim. Like this could be a contrasting trim. which would look really cool. So if you just had nice plain fabric, or you had a solid interior, maybe if you pick the pink out and you could fold it over, or the grey, that would look pretty cool too. Depends on what you've got in your stash. So I'm just going to clean this up, cut the thread, fix that one up in a second, push it under. And we're done. Now, I don't know how long this has taken me, but I know it hasn't taken me very long at all. So now we've just got to tidy things up. Where did I thread? Oh, it's there. Tidy this thread up. And we're done. There's a thread. Oh, no, we haven't. You know what? We've forgotten one little bit. We've just got to stick our hand in and sew the turning circle. The turning circle? The turning bit. So just pull it tight, put your edges down. No one's ever going to look at this bit. So pull them together. You could iron them. But I tell you what, my son is never ever going to look at this. Okay. If you had a label that you didn't want people to see, you could put it in that piece there. You could put your label here at the where you put the ribbon. You could put a label in the side. You could have a nice decorative label here. So easy to make. If you batch quilted them, they would be even quicker. But look at this. Okay, let's try this out. This is the big book. Let's have a look. It fits in perfectly. Look at this. Let's just tie the little bit. Let me just move the camera up a little bit. Okay. Look at that. Fits in perfectly. Have that in his school bag. It's not going to go anywhere. Oh, I'm really impressed with this. It was so easy. A little bit of extra room because some books are longer, especially some of them when they come out in the hardbacks. And then let's have a look at the smaller one. So lots of room, fits in there nicely, and then we can just tie this top. And boom, boom chakalaka, that's in the bag. Now I'm just going to do one thing that I have forgotten. I'm just going to take those and fold them, and now they won't fray. Oh, look at that.